Okay, so I'm going to start. You know what? With technology, you always have things that you have to go with. So let's go. Typically, we think that success or being a natural is what is necessary. And when we think about common findings with success, we think about work ethic, we think about the love of the game or love of the craft. We think about being full out and being a student every single day, wanting to seek out. There's so many things if we wanted to say what are people aren't willing to do or don't want to do. Well, what we also have found in research, and I'm going to recommend a book for you on the next slide, is that it's really not about social intelligence. Sometimes we think it's about their ability to walk in a room and command attention, or their ability to connect with people, or eye contact, or the best looking people, or people with good looks are going to be more successful, or good health, or high IQ, or just regular all around talent. And what we're finding is it's not that at all. It's a new expression called grit. And it's not a new expression, it's just something that has legs right now. And Angela Duckworth wrote this, and she's the author, and what it talks about in this book, which I am enjoying immensely, is the power of passion and perseverance. And when we look about, well, we're going into these slides right now, we're going to think about what is necessary for us to have, passion and being able to stay in it versus duck out when it's not going our way. How about staying in it and fighting through it? I've got an issue right now that we talked about internally yesterday that's kicking my tail mentally. I'm telling you, I've thought about it for years. I still haven't been able to get my head around it. I still haven't been able to figure out the problem. I know it's a system issue. I know that. But I haven't been able to put my finger on why does the system get fought all the time, or why does the system not honored, or why is our system perceived at times too difficult. And my job isn't to duck out, but to stay in there and try to figure it out, asking the right questions, asking Steve the right questions, asking our team the right questions to get this issue fixed. Even if it's the hardest issue in our company, I don't have the luxury not to stay on it. And grit is the power of passion and being able to stay in the game on the issue. Now, there's many of us out there that we've got issues just like the one I brought up. You don't know what it is, you just know I have one. And you've got one too. It could be an employee, it could be a system, it could be that we continually don't feel the confidence to charge the right prices. It could be that they're discounting, they don't want to raise their prices, they don't want to do things or work on their dialogue. They just avoid it. So if you have to think about the things in your company that needs your grit right now, the absolute grit, it's your combination of owning your business, the passion, but the perseverance to stay in there and figure it out, even if you hate it. I mean, I hate this topic that I have to deal with, that Steve has to deal with, and I need him right now. And there's times when we're in a room, and Jennifer, as we were talking yesterday, said, we have this conversation over and over again, and it doesn't change anything because it gets too hard, and then we bail mentally. So grit is staying in there. What's your internal chatter? And I thought about this last night over and over again. I don't have the luxury, like I said, to bail on this. I don't even have the luxury to put it in a drawer. I've got to make sure that this is top of mind every day. And it's not going to beat me. I want it to be the number one thing that we worked on this year and got right, versus having to walk in and be surprised that it's still not working. And that's that personal internal chatter that you have to create for yourself. So questions that will be asked during this. Is Steve on yet? Okay, we're still waiting on him. The questions that will be asked during this time is, what is natural talent and can that be taught? Well, let's go back. In this situation, we've got some naturals in our company. I mean, Steve's been doing this since he was born. There's natural talent, natural thinkers, and sometimes the natural thinkers aren't always the ones that put the things into action. They can think it, but they can't do it. But how do we create a natural? You know, I'm thinking about watching Steph Curry, and wow, I'm impressed with him. You know, he was out for 2 weeks. He comes back and he scores 40 points, and he had a knee injury. And some people will be like, oh, I have a knee, so you're probably going to get 8 points out of me. And he comes back his first night after being on the injured list and scores 40 points. Not just because he's great at playing basketball, but it's great of how he thinks about the game of basketball and what he expects from himself. Is natural talent the only thing? Is a natural talent enough? No, it's not. You know, and I go back to thinking about what can get in the way. How do you teach that hunger? How do you teach that drive? How do you teach the disciplines that Steph is willing to go through that other people aren't? Well, it's the same thing in business. Some people have the natural ability to put themselves out there to be a student, to have the disciplines in place to get better. It's not okay to say that was just okay. He says, I have to get better every day. I have to think better than everyone every day. I'm not the biggest guy on the court, so maybe I'm going to be the fastest guy on the court. And maybe someone isn't a natural as far as their social ability to communicate, but they've got to learn how to become social. And so can it be taught? Yes, but it's got to be taught with specifics and systems, and then those systems have to be honored. So our internal chatter on that is, are we mandating that our systems be honored in the salon? Even someone that doesn't think those systems are necessary. Yes, this is how we're going to do it. Not like that, like this. I mean, we have to that very one thing that you want your business. We're talking about the professional side right now. And when you find that thing that you want to be loyal to, not just a career, but something that is so fulfilling that you want to be loyal to that business the rest of your life, or find those hairdressers that want to be loyal to the beauty industry the rest of their life, that's when it can become magical. For some people, it's just a resting point, like a rest area on their way somewhere versus wanting to be loyal to it. And we've got to find the right people. That's why scouting and recruiting has to be something else that's in your internal chatter. Writing down your team, a list of looking at your team every day. Where are your strengths? Where are your opportunities? Could you bring more talent in to push the rest of the organization? Your internal chatter on this as an owner is to find the people, find and seek out the people that are going to be loyal to their craft and loyal to the salon that they're working in at the moment. I mean, this is not about just sticking with this for days, not for months, but years. And they're working hard to make it their future. This is what grit is sticking to it. The grit means stamina. And I don't know. I mean, we all have days where we go, oh, my God, this is a hard one. But you've got to be willing to not just think about the days that are in the future, not just the months in the future, but the years in the future where your reputation and the team that you're building, the business that you're building, are really what you're dreaming about. And true grit is they're always knowing that they're working on making the future what they wanted their reality to be. And so if it isn't right, what are we going to work on? Are we going to have that pay attention factor? Are we going to see the opportunities every single day? Because we can't afford for it to get mundane. Because if it gets mundane, it gets very boring. And if you don't catch it, you don't even realize it's happening. The monotony of success is really, really something that can be a problem. Steve, are you on yet? Because I'm thinking about when a salon opens and they do their first 100, you almost have to recreate your mental thinking and mental capacity every 100,000 in the beginning, and then it'll be every 250,000, and then every 500,000, and then where you're thinking about where you're going. While you're growing your business, don't let the business just be the same as the dollars are growing, because it could become very boring to your staff and very boring to your employees. No, to your guests, I mean, rather. And is your business ever one that you're just making the donuts versus you're creating a new version of yourself every day? There's an expression I've always said, at 5 o'clock every day, we're either better or worse than we were the day before. We either have our best days ahead of us or best days behind us. And there he is.
Oh my God.
I know.
I'm worn out.
So the monotony of success can be the enemy, because it gets so casual and so boring. Steve, you might want to turn your air ducts down so they're not pointing right at you.
They're not.
Okay. So when we look at businesses making the donuts, that's when it gets boring. And that's when it gets casual, and that's when we lose our sense of energy. And that's when you start to hear the staff. Watch them walk in. Are they walking in to attack the day, or are they walking in to just, hi, did you want to be here? I didn't want to be here. God, is it not Saturday? I can't wait till Saturday. Listen to the conversation of your staff, because if they're getting bored, they're boring. And in front of your customer, you can't ever do that, because they can pick up on boring very quickly. Why is it that new businesses still have that giddy up? And I always said, when we were opening restaurants, we would have 6 hostesses, 40 wait staff, 20 bus boys, 5 bartenders. And then you go back 6 months later, and there's a half a hostess, because she's also the bartender or the cocktail waitress, and the staff is half. That's because we got boring. We couldn't keep the energy alive. We got bored, and the customer knew it, and they went somewhere else that was more exciting. And we can't take that chance. Steve, can you jump in on this topic, because you usually can recognize this too in a salon?
Well, I don't know that I agree with the title, monotony of success. I don't think true success is ever a monotony. I don't think true success is ever just making the donuts. I think that's part of that word perseverance, is that true success allows you to keep passion in the forefront, and persevering is what allows you to keep the passion in the forefront. Passion to me is what gets you in the game. It's what gets you noticed. It's what drives you. But I think people do get bored, or it gets tough, and when it gets tough, they second guess the passion that they had, and is it the right place? And I think many people negotiate off of what they feel passionate about because it gets tough, and maybe it's because it gets mundane, and maybe it's because they work day after day and don't see progress, or they don't recognize or notice the progress. That perseverance in its own right, whether it bears fruit or whether it doesn't, persevering is what it takes to not let it become just making the donuts. And you can see it. I think hairdressers especially battle it throughout the day. Seeing 8 to 10 clients in a day, and the repetitiveness of it. think it's the repetitiveness of the salon, the hairdresser-client relationship sometimes that can allow things to maybe get mundane or get boring, or their dialogue not to stay fresh, or them not to keep the same passion in the forefront. But again, that's what successful people do. We just, as you know, Terry, we just had Gino with us for the last couple of days, and we've known Gino now for, heck, 30 years, close to, and it's that same passion to see us. It's that same passion to sit down and have a conversation, and the same passion to know that we're going to laugh together and know that we're also going to work together and accomplish. And so it doesn't get mundane if the passion is obvious, if it's present, and it only stays present through perseverance.
So this next slide I really love. And if you think about athletes, I mean, if you read anything in a newspaper or watch television, you're going to hear the word talent over and over again. But talent isn't the only thing that makes a difference. It's a series of small achievements and plus the ability to practice to improve. And that's what creates dazzling. And what we find is we as owners have to make sure that small achievements are taking place and that we want to practice to improve, whether it's our dialogue, whether it's our service enhancements, whether it's the way we serve and the things that we're doing to make the experience even more powerful. It's our dollar per guest average. It could be up 25 cents. That's still a small achievement. It could be selling our first tool. And also the things that we're willing to do to improve, practice to improve, that's going to create dazzling. And when you think about someone who, when we talk about hairdressers, sometimes we'll be coaching a salon and say, talk to us about Ethel. Ethel is, she's about $1,600 every week, and she's pretty consistent. But see, we talk about the dollar, and we don't talk about her small achievements and her willingness to improve. And those are the two things that you also have to put into your business to create the internal chatter that your staff needs to hear from you. What are we practicing to improve on? And what are the small achievements that we should be celebrating together? Those two things should be part of your conversations as you're coaching them, because they need to know that you're looking at that and that you want them to be looking at that. And see, if we're not doing that, we can get stuck in thinking that there's nowhere to go. I think we do this well with our apprentices or our assistants, but I think that we have a hard time talking about this with our high-end staff. I think about the time that Michael Jordan, Steve, you tell this story better, when he was playing in the first Olympic Games and Coach K was his coach.
Yes, he, I heard it from Coach K's explanation, and he said that he was, Coach K went into the Olympic practices not knowing what he would get from Michael Jordan, as far as he knew he would get a great effort, but didn't know if he was going to get any kind of a relationship as a result of it. And he said, and part of the reason was Michael went to the competitive.
Yeah.
He went to the University of North Carolina. He was already in the NBA, already probably already MVP of the league by then. But he said that of all the players, said on the first day of practice, Michael came up to him and said, "Coach, can you stay after practice and work with me for a while?" And Coach K was blown away by that. Just that Michael, already at the top of his game, wanted extra time on the court with Coach K. And he had a specific agenda of what he thought Coach K could help him with, but just that he would ask for extra, not just in the practice coaching, but he knew and respected. I'm sure it was one of his ways to say and show his respect for Coach K. But of all the coaches that were there, Coach K is the one he wanted to spend the extra time with. So And that is part of recognition. It's practicing to improve is a really good thing. I think of the quote that we all grew up with, which is a fallacy that says practice makes perfect. And what I've come to understand as I've gotten older is that practice makes permanent. Only perfect practice makes perfect. And so part of that is the process of learning how to practice properly in order to be great at what you do. It's not just time. It's not just putting in the time. You could say, if I was doing it wrong over and over and over and over again, it wouldn't matter if I spent 24 hours a day doing that. It would still not be the right kind of practice that would allow me to improve.
Good. So the next slide is talking about the lineup. And there's two people on there. You've got your naturals, and you could look at your people as your naturals on staff. They just have this natural ability to cut hair. They have the natural ability in their body position. They've got a natural ability with their taste factor and their style. And then you've got your strivers. And the strivers is what you're looking for. The hard work, the effort, and the experience they want to put in. Naturals can sometimes hide. They can say, look I'm cutting better than everybody else here. But they don't work on their dialogue. They don't work on rescheduling. They just work on being a natural cutter or natural colorist. A striver, and that's where Michael was. Michael was a natural, but he wasn't he was cut in his high school years as a basketball player. So Michael realized if he was going to be the best out there, he had to become a striver. These aren't his words. This is just what I got from reading her book too. And when I look at what we think about Angela's words, it's true. Strivers, and I remember you're not going to have an easy time competing against a striver. And I tell the story all the time of realizing that I wanted to be a cheerleader at a young age. And I started practicing doing 1,000 jumps a day. And so when it came time to try out for cheerleading, and this isn't making me the end-all be-all, I'm just giving you my example, no one was going to compete with me if you didn't do 1,000 jumps a day. I mean, I was going to make it. And I wasn't a natural. I have to tell you, I wasn't a natural. I couldn't jump like other people. I couldn't tumble like everyone else. But because I put the time in, it allowed me to stand out, because even the naturals weren't doing 1,000 jumps a day. And that's the whole point. When you look at your staff, and this is another internal chatter you've got to create personally. Am I surrounding myself by naturals, and or am I creating strivers? And some of this starts out with you. How do you create strivers in the business? I mean, I can even think of Steve. You know, when I think about what he's done his whole life in the beauty industry, is he learned how to sell, and he's a natural. But you know what? If we rely just on Steve's natural, how are we going to create strivers? Because we need to do that. And when we create strivers in our organization, from everyone that is in the field to the people on the inside, it has to be purposeful, and then there has to be a system behind it. Strivers have to have that kind of discipline because they know what they're working towards on the other side. And naturals can get lost sometimes in just the God-given gift. And they usually come out smelling like a rose, but how do you duplicate that? How do you duplicate that? And that's what we need to focus on and work on in our salons. You know, the 4 things that strivers have in common is they continue to deepen their interest. And so what I mean by that is they're going to deepen their interest as a hairdresser. They're going to master it. They're not going to skip around and go to X-ray school and then come back over here and maybe come back to being a hairdresser. They are exactly where they're supposed to be. And they stay absolutely focused to deepen their interest and become the master at doing what they do. they have deliberate practice, and they work on their weaknesses, and they want feedback. And that goes back to Michael thinking his shooting was a weakness, and he wanted feedback from Coach K. They have deliberate practice. They don't fight it. They're full out. They know what practice will create for them. And your internal chatter in your company has to be all about, what are we working on? What are we focusing on? This is what we're doing at this staff meeting. This is why this education's coming in. We have to make sure that during deliberate practice that we're not using productivity with activity. And activity is we're having a class tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Productivity is we're going to take what we learned from this class that we're having on Monday and apply it in these areas, and then we're going to get feedback from each other, and we're going to shift and tweak and whatever we had to do to make ourselves better because of this class. They understand purpose better than anyone else, meaning they know their work is important to others. They know that their work gives back. And as hairdressers, we know that it creates the added confidence that comes from looking their best by stepping into the community, stepping into the workforce, stepping into their personal circles with more confidence because of what we've done as hairdressers. And the hope, they have hope that they get to do it over and over and over again, making a difference along the way. These 4 things strivers have in common, and they don't lose sight of that. Steve, do you want to add anything to this list?
Well, I think it's an interesting way that it's listed. I think that you know what I was thinking about, Terry, when you were saying that was Gino talked about on Monday. He talked about the law of diminishing action that takes place after an event. So, for example, you said that activity versus productivity. Productivity was taking a class and how are we going to use it immediately? Are we going to use it immediately? And I think that so much time, there is so much education, and there's so much training that goes on about various things in the salon. But I think that because the business doesn't stop to let us implement sometimes, I think that we do have that law of diminishing action. So how many classes have we had? How many things have you heard? How many times have you heard Terry speak on productivity or Terry speak on internal chatter as to the service commitment, the dollar per guest, the service dollar, the take-home dollar? And think about how much action you've taken as a result of it. Have you taken everything you set out to? And my mind went to personally, to be honest with you. Many of you know that I attended a John Maxwell team certification, and I had very specific things that I came away from there with that I wanted to implement. And again, getting thrown back into the school business and the distributor business, I haven't been able to follow through and accomplish all of the things that I set out to that week, and so it's you're never going to find time to practice. You're never going to find time to deepen your interest. You have to make the time, and it's what we all struggle with. But you do. You have to carve out the time. You have to treat it as an appointment on your appointment book. As important as anything else that you'll do all week has to go on with your personal development. Otherwise, your internal chatter becomes more of a negative chatter.
Well, and I think that's a great point. Every time I watch a sporting event, I'm almost irritated, and I think, God, I'd be a great coach. They play for 8 months a year, and not that that's easy. I'm not. Please don't think I think what professional coaches and managers do is easy, but I think, God, they get to practice all week for a 3-hour game. Practice all week. Strategize all week, think all week, think about the competition, position themselves, and come in and try to win and be at their best for those 3 hours to go back. And I'm thinking, God, I'd love that sometimes. Because you're right, we're in it all the time. When do we get to work on it? When we're open those hours a week. And that's why I'm continually talking about hours that salons are open, because when you're open 60 hours a week, when do you have time to work on it versus in it. And even at 40 hours a week, I'm going to tell you that's tough, because to get our staff together, to put the time in, to position it when the business is still in full motion, that's not easy. So you've got to deliberately realize that you've got to set up time to get better. And how are we going to do that? And that's why, whether it's weekly meetings, whether it's in-salon classes and specialty classes, that's all in addition to the work hours that we've got. So we have to make sure that we not only can be good and position ourselves successfully in the community, and let's say we're open 40 hours a week, and then we've got to have extra hours so we can work on it too, to get better, to position ourselves better, to have strategy, to work on our systems, our people, on our services, and make those enhancements. And if we don't set and carve out time, and we're not known to what are we working on, what are we working on, what are we working on from our team, then we can get casual, and that never works. The next slide is all about practice again. Are you serious? That's all we do is practice. We're practicing sometimes on every customer. Well, I remember when I used to say that to Tom Booth, a boss, I said, I am not going to have this new staff in the front of the house be practicing on customers. They're either able or we need to discount the service, because it's not fair to the customer that we practice on them. We've got to exercise the skill, but we're not supposed to be practicing on our guests. We have to make sure that when we release someone, they are absolutely equipped to do what they can do. What does that chatter need to sound like? I want you to try this dialogue today. I want to hear it on all your customers today. I'm going to listen in on you, on your conversations with your guests, and I want this new dialogue tried on every single guest today. Not will you do it, may not, and walk away and scared to death, and they're not going to be able to do it. I can remember the amount of times that every time I'm on the phone or something feels great as a customer, I try to bring that back to PSC, and the staff, at first will fight me on it. For example, I was on the phone with American Express, and they said, Mrs. Cowan, may I place you on a brief hold? And I thought, that felt great. I went downstairs and I said, it's no longer will you hold please, or can I put you on hold, may I place you on a brief hold? And I can remember their first reaction was, we're not saying that, no one says that. Well, guess what? If you call PSC, they'll say, may I place you on a brief hold? It's awkward until it's owned, and then it's absolutely right and easy. And the Japanese have a saying, fall 7, rise 8. Fall 7, rise 8. They have to do it wrong 7 times before they master it. And sometimes I feel like one fall and we bail. That didn't work with her. I'm not doing that again. And we need to incorporate fall 7, rise 8, fall 7, rise 8. Let's get in there and try it again. Or that didn't work, I must have not said it right, I'm going to try it a different way this time. Or I'm going to at least do it 8 times before I bail. And I think that's a discipline, and that's an internal chatter commitment that we're going to fall 7, rise 8, and we're going to attempt it. And some people will hit it right on the first time. It might take Steve 1 time and the customer, he gets a yes. It might take me 8 times. But guess what? On the other side of it, we're going to be better, and we're going to be rooting everyone else on while they're getting it. It might take someone 3, someone 4, and they're waiting for Terry Cowan to get it on the 8th time. But once we're all there, what a celebration that is. Steve?
I was waiting for you to get it right the 8th time.
I know, honey. I know.
You know what? Internal chatter is just, it's critically important, and the fall 7, rise 8 is a great one. I think anybody that knows either of us well, all I post on Facebook are just little life quotes, because to me that's how myself write is those quotes and then thoughts that go with them, because life and certainly the striving to be successful is a it's an everyday thing. It's an every minute thing, and it's managing voices. It's managing, learning how to not listen to your internal chatter, but create your internal chatter. You should spend more time talking to you than listening to you, because we know that 9 times out of 10, what we say to ourselves, we're the most critical to ourselves. We're the, some people say the most honest, but you know what? I'm all for putting aside the honesty of me telling me what I can't do, and I'd rather tell me what I can do. And I think that's this process. It's teaching young people how to manage those voices and how to talk to themselves in ways that bring out the best in them. In a world that isn't designed for that, unfortunately. So it's all about building that team, building those skills, both technical and personal and interpersonal skills. So I love where you're going with this, Terry.
So when we go to the next one, it's always, if you talk to successful people, they'll always say it's the 1,000 little things or the 100 little things. Well, when I was writing this for us, I thought, let's just start with 10. Maybe we get these 10 little things right. And then you create your own list of the little things we're working on. That we get everyone, Fall 7, Rise 8, to work on these things. And then we work on 10 more, or even 5 at a time. But if we think about dependability, it's funny is are we dependable to each other? It could be walking into the powder room, seeing that there's towels on the floor, picking those up, touching up the powder room and moving on, that we're all dependable to each other, that we're going to service that powder room when we go in. Or as we're walking back from the front of the salon to the back, we're looking at things that we can pick up along the way to make our teammates' lives easier, whether it's just straightening up and creating a more pleasant-looking salon. You don't have to say, I'll take that for you. You just take it. And so we work on dependability of each other. And dependability could also be punctuality. Image is another thing. We're going to work on our image. We're going to be the best-looking salon. I've got salons that when they come to education, and I've got to do a shout-out to Hollywood Hair in Centralia, but when they're in the room, they dress for power every time they go to an educational event. And I also know that that's the image that they mandate in their salon every day. And you can really see the effort they put into their image. And that's huge. And you want to be known for that. The other little things is we're going to work on our dialogue. Our care factor is one that we should be spending time on, our care factor for our guests, but our care factor for each other. The team hustle, the way in which we move, the way we have that urgency walking around. I mean, another salon of ours, James Anthony, I think about Tina Salerno, and every time that I've talked to any of her staff, I always tell them, study her pace. She has a hustle about her that is very, very contagious. And so if I worked for Tina, I'd have to study the way in which she moved and the way she thought and where she positions herself, because she's always doing something. You need to teach that. That team hustle isn't something that Tina can just say. I mean, I can say it, watch her, but Tina has to mandate that they learn hustle from her, and then there's a hustle expectation. Team spirit, it's another one. Are we positive? Do we give that kind of energy? Performance stats are 100 little things that we're thinking about using our scorecard. Practice, practice, practice. Study, study, study the best in how they think. And then being full out. This might seem like a lot, but this is a great list to start on to say, what's our internal chatter? What's our Fall 7, Rise 8? Where are we at on a scale of 1 to 10 on these things? Could we improve on them? And how are we going to do this not just once in a while, but every day, not just days, not just weeks, but years to get the result that we want? Steve, let's have the background air. There it is.
That's how you know I'm here. Well, it's funny because listening to the radio as I was driving to pick Vicki up this morning, and one of the people I was listening to spoke about his experience with LASIK surgery. And so there's a personal touch, personal service business again. And he said that the whole prep, he said when the doctors and the people came in, they were almost running. They were rushing. They were visibly rushing through his service. And he said, "Wait a minute, you got to give me some time here. I'm not ready for this." And so they gave him some time, 1 second. But he said, "What's the rush? What are you hanging around for?" And the doctor said, "I've got a plane to catch." And that one thing totally ruined his experience. I'm not saying that you can rave about the experience as a result of LASIK, but you don't necessarily rave about the experience of it. But that one thing really stop and think of so much about our presence and
okay. You're in a bad cell. Sorry, I don't know where you're at. You might be.
For the guest, would they have let it show that they were rushing?
Okay. Can we mute him for a minute? You need to mute yourself. Well, and I love that you said that, because even if the surgery was absolutely perfect, it was still ruined because he felt like it was rushed. And he might have been the best, his eyes might have responded the best to LASIK than anybody else in the last year, but it was still ruined because of the one comment. And I think that's a great example of a problem. I can remember when I had I turned 50, so you have to start having different kinds of tests, and boy, I was nervous. I had to have a colonoscopy for the first time, and I thought, you hear horror stories from people. Well, my experience was absolutely perfect, and I think the prep was perfect, and when I got there that day, I couldn't believe how at ease the team of nurses and technicians and the doctor himself all made me feel. And it's all about creating. And now that is not a beauty service. We all know that. But they could make that more easy and more enjoyable than sometimes a salon experience. That's a problem. So we have to say, let's not hide behind the fact that it's the beauty industry. We still, too, can make it even better. When we go to the next one, I think about Magic Johnson, and many of you have heard this, but it's worth hearing again. You know, we had the opportunity to hear Magic speak, and he stepped out in front of us, and there were 200 or 300 of us in the room having Magic Johnson all to ourselves. And I just think, my goodness, what are the odds? And he said, you know what? I was not a natural. I had to work at it. When my buddies would say to me, "Hey, Magic, let's go out tonight," he said, "Listen, if I'm going to be something, I've got to be in the gym." And to him to have that maturity and for him to know what he had to do to make it, that's maturity right there. Many people don't even know what they need to do to make it. And being marginal is okay with them. It wasn't okay for Magic Johnson. And he opened the conversation and said to all of us, "Do you have any questions for me?" Well, I stood up and I said, "What about when you had someone that had the God-given natural ability to play basketball and he joined your team, but their head got in the way? What did you do?" And he said, "We couldn't afford the distraction. We got rid of them as quickly as possible. Because when you think you've arrived, you're really going to create a distraction." So here's some distractions that could be anywhere. It certainly could be in the basketball, NBA, professional world, but let's hear what they are. Once you make it, that could be a distraction. Once I made it to the LA Lakers, I didn't think I had to work anymore. It's new money. They've never had that kind of money before in their life. New independence. They're living on their own, and they're now a professional basketball player with all the celebrity that goes with that. Drugs, women, alcohol, they're exposed to a whole different world now because of this. The head games that being a professional athlete and the paparazzi and everything else can do. They don't think they need to follow the rules. They're too big for the rules. All of those could be things that get in the way. Now, I'm not saying this list is exactly the same, but what I would do if I were all of you is, what are the distractions in your business that you've got to protect people from? And they finally are working at a salon and they think that they're going to get the overflow of guests. It's new money. They've never made money before. They have a new independence. They've got their own car, and now that they've got a little money in their pocket, they're going out at night. They're not creating balance for themselves. Drugs, women, men, alcohol, they could be part much, which is affecting their work. They don't need to follow the rules because other people in the salon don't follow the rules. So you've got distractions too. Social media could be a distraction for you. Phones could be a distraction for you. Not wanting to be an assistant any longer could be a distraction for you. What are your distractions? And then you've got to go in and say, can I make those distractions better in here? Fall 7, rise 8. Can I help them become a better version of themselves? If not, we've got to part ways, because those distractions will now become your new business model if you don't protect it. Honey? So that's where I put it on here. Distractions become the chatter. And here's more of them. I forgot I wrote this. Sorry. They're not busy enough. They don't have any money when they're first an assistant. I wrote not busy again. Extra activities, dating, building a personal life, social media, cannot get it. They're just not getting that they've got to have and be an entertainer with their guests. They just don't want to communicate. They fight leadership, don't need to practice. And why is this taking so long? You have to, as a leader, overcome those distractions. Go ahead, Steve. Steve, did you want to add?
No, I tried to tell Brian by text that it's breaking up a bit. I'm going through an area where I haven't got the best reception, so I'm only hearing you partially, and there may be times where you're asking for me to jump in and I don't hear it. So I apologize. Okay. I'm only picking up a little bit.
We're on the last 10 minutes, so anyway, I'm gonna take questions in a minute. But I think that you all know what your distractions are in your business. Your distractions could be excuses. Your distractions could be not following the system. Your distractions could be other things I didn't even list yet. But you've got to address those, either one-on-one or as a team. These are our distractions. And eliminate the distractions. And our salon pledge, the founding principles, create positive chatter for the salon. Sometimes we get frustrated, like I did yesterday. I did not have the most positive day for myself yesterday because when I'm processing to create change, I've got to look at every situation. And I know I think I talked about this once, where the type of complainer you are. And I'm a complainer that tries to take control, meaning I know this is a problem. Why can't we fix it? What is wrong? What is wrong with this? Like, you see me as President of the United States and ISIS, I would be a maniac every day trying to figure out that problem, because when there's a problem for me, I can't get off of it because I know that we're smart enough to fix it. And so I will stay in this mode until I've got to have something to add to it. I'll keep trying things, and maybe they're not working, but at least I'm trying something. I cannot live staring at the same problem and not have some kind of resolve for it. It makes me a crazy person. And that could be an employee, it could be a service, it could be a system. Any one of those could drive me nuts till I put some kind of positive fix on it. And that's my job. Creates positive chatter for the salon. I'm not going to live with that negativity on this issue. And negativity is not just chatter. Negativity could be the systems we're tolerating. the services that we're tolerating that aren't working, the people that we're tolerating that aren't working, all of those. And that's why we've got to create and remove those boundaries or those obstacles that fight what we're trying to do to create positive chatter for the salon. Now, I love this, and then I want to open it up for questions at the last, Brian, and if you could join me. The brass ring in a career is not the number of dollars you earn. It is when you become indispensable to your team and your guest. And I really think that's true. You know, the dollars is certainly a measuring stick, but it's when you become indispensable to your team and your guests, when you walk in the room, that the business is going to be a better version of itself because, and that's not just for the owner, that's for teammates too, that when that receptionist walks in, we all take a sigh of relief because we know the system's going to improve today. You know, I think that when I think about Maggie at the gallery in Springfield, Illinois, I know when she walks in, the staff knows that she's got the system under control. And that's when you become indispensable to your team and your guests, when you add that kind of expertise to the system and the service that we're delivering. Brian, can we have some questions for these last few minutes? I love this topic. I mean, it's heavy, but it's good, and we have to be known for our positive personal internal chatter to our teammates. Brian, can you help me out here?
Yes, ma'am. Right now, there actually are no questions waiting.
Are they contemplating? What are you doing out there? Or what are you thinking, or any comments? How many minutes do we have left? 4?
7.
7 minutes. Oh, good. I think about, when I think about this is, I wish someone would have taught me this when I was 18 years old, would have taught me this, that what I had to know what grit is, and how do I put grit into my everyday life, and how do I position myself. I think I've had grit my whole life, and I think I've been, because I had to. You know, Gino and Steve and I were talking the other night. I mean, we had nothing when we were growing up. I mean, we weren't poverty, but if we had to earn it. And grit is sometimes someone else forcing you to have grit even before you have it. For example, if my mother would volunteer our family to do collections perhaps on behalf of the Red Cross or muscular dystrophy or the Cancer Society, and she'd say, absolutely, we'll go to door, we'll represent the neighborhood. And then she would say, Terry, go to door and represent our family. I mean, it wasn't an option for me to go. She just said, you're going. And I'm not going to tell you that was easy at first, walking up to every door and saying, we're collecting on behalf of Red Cross for the family, our family in the neighborhood, would you like to make a donation on behalf of our neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. But every house taught me grit. Every house. There's people now that have children that play baseball or something, and they've got to have 100 tickets sold to raise money, and the child doesn't go to one door, or the child doesn't give one speech. And that doesn't teach grit. And when you figure out, I bet there's owners on the phone that understand what I'm talking about, that your family made you have grit. They helped you start the grit process. And that's what we need to do with hairdressers, is you teach them grit. You are going to get 10 customers. I'm helping you get the grit necessary. And I didn't know what my mom was teaching me then. And if someone passed away in the neighborhood, my mom would say, go collect flowers, donation money for flowers, and we'll send flowers as a neighborhood with your sympathy. Terry, go door to door. And I bet those people said, oh my God, here she comes, she's asking for money. But it got to the point where I made friends with all the people. I was no longer afraid. And that's what you need to create in a grit situation. And that's what many of the youngsters only have grit on their phone. They don't have grit with the human race. Brian?
Yes, ma'am. We do have a question from Tara Grigsby.
Hi, Tara.
Her question is, how can I get my team to better understand the importance?
Oh, I lost Brian. I didn't hear the question because Steve jumped on. Steve, mute, please. Go ahead, Brian.
Question again is, how can I get my team to better understand the importance of internal chatter?
Well, you've got to be known for it. At some point, if you start talking like this and saying, you know, I love the Ritz-Carlton because every day internal chatter is they talk about the 20 basics in their company. And every day of the year, one basic is covered. That creates internal chatter, like what are we focusing on today? Today we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, or we're protecting the assets of the company, and we're going to, another date could be we're going to the expectations of our guests, whether spoken or unspoken. But every day they talk about, so every month they're going through all 20 of their basics 1.5 times. So how many times are we covering those at the Ritz-Carlton over the year? You've got to be known for it by raising the topic. It could be a text you send to your entire team and say, this is our focus today. This is what we're talking about today. I'm looking for this conversation to be shared. But you've got to be the example, and you have to start it. And it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but once you're known for it, remember, fall 7, rise 8. And don't give up. Even if you get resistance those first 7 times, keep going until they say, you know, Tara's not going to back down on this. We better jump in. Brian?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else, sir?
Nope. Tara says, great, thank you. But no other questions. A comment from Jen Cottrell saying how much she loves the fall 7, rise 8. She has to remember that every time she goes out there as a new consultant, she has to always be better than the last attempt.
Good. Did we wear out our welcome, Bri?
We are right about there, Terry.
Okay. Everyone, thank you so much. I think about something Gino said, and I'm going to steal it and use it forever, and it was from one of his teachers growing up. And I think it was a beauty school teacher, and she told Gino, you are going to be something very special someday. And so this is my words to all of you on the phone and those of you that are listening on a recorded basis in the future. You are going to be very, very special if you're not already. And if there's days that you question what you can become because you're doubting, maybe you're thinking or what you're working on isn't working and you're just doubting it. Steve and I believe so much in you that if you doubt for a second what you can become, we want you to borrow our faith in you because we see all opportunities for you in the future. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month.